Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Basic Binges, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, we review popular shows while eating and drinking our binge-worthy snacks and drinks. If you're watching live, don't forget to redeem those channel points. We've been back for a while, so go ahead and do cruel things if you must. Uh, I'm your host, Erric Ramirez, and right now, in light of what we are about to embark on, I have all the blue foods. I have blue peeps. I have blue Sour Patch Kids, blue what's it called? What are these called? Uh, these blue things, blue suckers, and I also have like blue little bug juices things. So all the blue foods in honor of Percy Jackson. But I want to introduce you guys out there to my wonderful, wonderful guests, Jordyn, Kyle, and Alejandro. How are you guys doing today? We'll start with you, Alejandro. How are you, and what are you snacking and drinking on?
I'm good. I'm good. Ready to talk about this. Should be interesting. I wasn't as nifty having any of the blue foods. Got the blue cap, but I always like the thinking cap, so I'll just say I did that on purpose. Haha. But other than that, I'm having some KFC. All right, it's not the meal of the gods, and a little bit of a little Pepsi on the side. So I'm ready to have some discussions of this really cool show with some food.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you for being here. Jordyn, how are you out there? Haven't seen you in a while. What are you snacking on and how you been?
This is nuts. It feels like an old muscle that I haven't flexed in a long time. And speaking of flex, they flex at Camp Half Blood, so I'm really excited to talk about Percy Jackson. I recently just had a little bit of it's called a village burger from one of our local haunts around here. It's got arugula, it's got like meat, cheese, all that stuff, and I have it over here. Then I also have, because I'm so loyal to Cutwater, they came out with a tiki hurricane. So I've got some of that in my little tub. And speaking of hurricane, there's a lot of like water, a lot of like thunder, and some missing thunderbolts coming this way. So I feel like that was a little appropriate for tonight.
It does. It does. It's right on cue. It's right on point with the series and the books and everything. But thank you for being here. Um, Kyle, how are you doing and what are you snacking and drinking on tonight?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I am I okay, I'm gonna let you guys in. I had not seen the movies. This series really was part and parcel of my first introduction. But since we're doing Greek, I went to my local Greek restaurant and I got Greek food. So I have some kebab and I have some Greek salad and I have some hummus and I have just a bunch of Greek food. So I'm really excited because I've
I'm
been like
jealous.
waiting for this for a couple hours now.
I know.
I should have
That
ordered
was
Greek food.
smart.
I did not even think.
Sounds
So
delicious.
smart.
Sounds a yum.
It is so smart. Next time. Next time I will have all the Greek food and none of the blue candy because my teeth and my stomach are going to hate me after this. But thank you guys all for being here. For everybody out there, we are going to talk about Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I don't know if you can see my screen. Episode 1 through 4. So we have a lot to talk about. But before we get started, I do want to let all of you guys out there know for the month of January, we are still fundraising for the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project is a nonprofit organization focused on suicide prevention efforts among the LGBTQIA plus youth. So please be sure to check that out if you want to donate. It's in the chat and everything. And it's a really good cause. But jumping right into it, everybody, I want to know because I've known about this series for a while because I am a really big fan of not only the original movies that came out in 2000 or in 2010, but also the book series and all the other series that have come out. And then when this one was coming, I had heard rumors, so I was gung ho for this. I want to know what was your past with Percy Jackson and the Olympians or the Lightning Thief or anything like that, and what did you think about this series even before you saw it? Like, what were your expectations? We'll start with you on this one, Jordyn.
Yeah, so I'm glad you started. So I read the books before, or I read the books after the original movies came out. And because I was really interested, I wanted to know more. And when the movies came out, I was like, oh, this is super interesting. It was a little bit older, right? Like, so it was easier for my consumption, sort of like at the age that I was at the time. And then I read the books and there was sort of like a disconnect because the books seemed a little bit younger than the movies that originally came out. So I was like, oh, okay, this was an interesting take. But I did notice that a lot of the detail that was taken in the books was not put in the movies. And so I was like, damn, I wish I had seen this. I wish I had seen, the oracles. I wish I had seen, right, like spoiler alert, like, oh, we're all like spoilers, right? Like, I wish I had seen Hades' child, like with the cheeseburgers, or like, I wish I had seen all of that. And we didn't get that in the movies, right? So my original exposure was the movies, and then I went to the books because I always want to like get context as to like what happened. So when the series originally, like I heard that they were redoing it and it was going to be a Netflix series, I was really excited because I was like, oh great, you can expand on sort of like the universe of Percy Jackson. You can expand on all of that. And so that was like my early on sort of like interactions with the Percy Jackson universe. I'm also like really into Greek and Athenian mythology, like every like aspect of it. I was super into like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where like you like get all this like mix and you get all this stuff. So to have this come out as a series was really awesome. And so that's sort of like how I was introduced to this. And then when I watched it, I kind of was like, oh, but like we'll probably get into like the like what worked and what didn't work later. But I thought overall I was like, great, like they can expand on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I was I was that way too. Plus, interesting enough to find out, Rick Riordan, who wrote the series, I think that was much more involved with this Disney series than they had originally let him be. So the movie, everybody was older casting, and they had changed and cut out a lot of stuff, and he was cut out of it completely. So I was really excited for this series. Alejandro, what were your inklings with this coming into a TV show, and what had you known about it from the past?
Now, with this, I was pretty hyped up originally because of actually producer Steph was giving me heads up about this coming in general because she understands that I have a huge love list like Jordyn for a Greek mythology. So my major obsession with, unfortunately, battle tactics and going into the things of Medusa and understanding, concepts of not only, things that are realistic, that sounds great, but going into actual, listening about this, the Odyssey and so forth as well. I really just enjoyed it in general. Now, when it came to the actual books, I was unaware. And at the time that when this movie came out, I was a little older. I was getting just a little bit, I think, close to being out of high school at the time. And my essential connection was with my younger brother. He read the Alex Rider series and the Percy Jackson series. And these were two series that he really enjoyed. And at the time being, I wasn't exactly, tempted to actually read the books. Because, I mean, it was at my time and opinion, it was around the same time as that the Harry Potter release books were coming out, additional wise. So it was a weird point for me where there was an excellent amount of actual, what you consider young adult fiction. And I was so stuck in that weird mindset of like, oh, can I really read children's books? This is before I was like really proud, full-fledged nerd and was, wanted to go stuff. So that being said, I backed up a little bit. However, the movie was announced, and it was in 2010 with the initial movie, and my brother was hyped because he had an opportunity to actually, see a movie that actually came from the book. And once again, I was kind of unaware of how the book was in any way, shape, or form. So when I saw the preview for it, I was like, wait, Medusa? What is this? Oh, modern times? This looks really cool. So I immediately went to watch it with him. I fell in love with it. And at the time being, he was just so wanting just to see a version of the book on screen. I didn't hear any complaints from him. That, and he was like 13. So like it was kind of a interesting thing. So anyway, I digress. Really loved the, at the time being the movie. And then I found out a little later about the discrepancies between the book and so forth. So actually seeing the series, I was kind of hyped about. So yeah, that's my initial interaction.
Nice. Well, thank you. And Kyle, what were your initial things going into the series? Did you know about it before?
So I was full disclosure. I have not read the books. And I've only seen bits and pieces of the movies. I'm going into the series totally with this being my first introduction, and I'm loving it. Second, during the pandemic, I had a number of friends. The height of the pandemic, I had a number of friends coming out and being like, "Oh, I'm reading Percy Jackson," or "These were my favorite books when I was a kid," and I never read them because I was in my Harry Potter era, and I just, I completely missed it. And even though everybody grows up loving Greek mythology, and I had that, just the stories and the details and everything else, this one for some reason just completely missed me. And I was like, summer camp for Greek. What is this? What is this summer camp? I don't understand. So I went through, and then my roommate started watching the series, and I had bought the books during the pandemic. So I lent her the books, and then I started reading them, and then I'm watching the show, and I've absolutely fallen in love with it. It's so much more than what I thought it was. Because I won't lie to you, the movies looked awful. The movies looked absolutely awful. But these were just these really bring home, and it's like it feels very personal, and the stories feel very like personal, and it just feels really human, and I'm absolutely in love with it.
Yeah, no, it definitely does bring in more of a human aspect towards like how the books were. For me, even though the movies are a different universe. It's the multiverse of Percy Jackson. They are in a different multiverse than what the book and the series is taking place in. You gotta love it for what it is, but it is not this.
Sure.
But getting into it, we are going to talk a little bit about the episodes because we have 4 episodes to get through today. So, first off, we start off with the first episode. It's called I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher. This is where we first get to meet Percy Jackson, Walker Scobell, Grover Underwood, who's Aaron Simbadri, Sally Jackson, Virginia Cole, Chiron Glenn Turman, and Electo, Megan Mullally, who I saw Megan Mullally. I didn't know she was in this, and I got super excited because I love her. But we start off meeting Percy, and he knows something's wrong with him, gets in a fight at school in front of the Met, and Electo, who is a Fury, goes to go attack him because they have finally found this demigod. We'll explain that here in a moment. And she goes to go attack him because he apparently stole something from the gods. He fights her and destroys her, gets home to his mother because he gets expelled from the school. She takes him out to this cabin of theirs, and she's kind of explaining to him more and more of his life and his father, that he just couldn't be around and that he's this very special kid. And Grover shows up and says they need to go because something's coming after Percy. Lo and behold, they see that Percy sees that Grover is a satyr. He has goat legs and freaks out, and they get in the car and they start driving to this place where Grover and Sally know where they're going to, Camp Half-Blood. As they're going, they get attacked by the Minotaur, and the Minotaur unfortunately crushes Sally Jackson into dust, and Percy ends up killing the Minotaur with his own horn and knocks out, and that's the end of episode 1. Jordyn, since you've read the books and everything like that, I'm gonna rely and jump to you a lot. What were your thoughts about this first episode? Like, did you want anything more? Did you like the little changes that they did do, like at the fountain? The fight wasn't inside the museum and everything like that. And the blue candy wasn't mentioned, the blue foods and everything weren't mentioned. But did you like these changes? Did you like how the pacing of the first episode started? And how did you feel about Percy? We'll start with you.
Yeah, so I will say I would just do a blanket statement on a couple of things. First of all, I don't think the episodes are long enough. I feel like they're super short and there's not enough for character development, especially like coming from the book. There's so much depth to these 3 main characters, right? Like you have Annabeth, you have Percy, and you have Grover, who have this like history and this historical stuff that they're going through. And I feel like 30 minutes, 35 minutes to 45 minutes is just not enough. And I've been feeling that way through the entire series. That being said, I do love the fact that they stick to the accuracy of the books to some extent, right? Like it's better than the movies. And I feel like we didn't get to see that portion of episode 1 in the movies, right? It was kind of like glossed over, right? And I feel like with this series, right, even though they are shorter, they've addressed details that I had questions about originally seeing the movies with the series. And so I do appreciate that 100%. I do feel like they've sort of um like kidified the entire thing, where it was like I read it and it was sort of almost like middle school, high school, like kids dealing with sort of all this stuff. And I do feel that energy to some extent, but I do feel like Percy, Annabeth, and Grover are way too young for like this series to play out. And that's just me. I'm seeing it, and Percy is still very young, innocent, still trying to figure out who he is, who his dad is, and all that. But I feel like in the book, like Percy had a stronger sort of like constitution as a person in that. But with this first episode, I thought it was a really good introduction. If like Kyle, I can't speak for you, but like if this was something that you had never seen before, it was an excellent introduction to this universe. So I like there's pros and cons, but I feel like overall the pros overweigh the cons for me. And it like watching it, I was like fully focused on what was going on. There wasn't a moment where I was like, "Oh, this shit's boring." And I can say that for the entirety of the series, right? Like there wasn't a moment where I was like, "This is just like it's taking too long." So
yeah, yeah. No, and I agree with you totally. Like little changes, they did seem a little bit young to me, but they're actually, which is great for Rick Riordan to do, the ages that they're supposed to be in the book. Well, when they were cast, when they filmed it, they were about a year older. So, which is a funny thing that we'll mention towards episode 4. But Kyle, having been like this for your first time into it, what did you think about this first episode?
It felt very okay, so initially it felt very 2000s film, and hear me out. It felt like something that I would have watched when I was in high school. It felt like something that I would have watched when I was, late middle school. So I was really interested in seeing where it was going to go. But I do remember seeing bits and pieces of the opening of the first film, and this felt a lot easier to digest. And I initially thought Grover was going to be the bad guy. So I was like, I don't trust this kid. And I don't trust a couple of the other kids in the camp. So I'm wondering if that's just my YA senses tingling, watching these kids going, I don't, you're too nice. I don't trust you. There's some susness going on here. Imposter, need to vent. Um, and it's good. I really liked it. It got better towards the end. It got better towards the end when his mom got vaporized, which has got to sound so weird. It's like, I'm sorry, kid, you're going through trauma. But to see that level of trauma on a Disney property, I was just like, okay, I'm here for this. We got to know the parent a little bit before they Disney axed him. We got to know the mom before we Disneyfied the mom.
Now Bambi getting smushed by a minotaur, or Bambi's mom getting smushed by a minotaur. That's all that's going through my head.
It's just Mickey on his little earpiece being like, you gotta take him out. You gotta take him out. Maybe sorry, you gotta squish her. You gotta take her out. And then it happens and he's just like, good. Good.
So Kyle, now throughout this entire series, I'm just gonna need you to speak like Mickey Mouse as I ask you questions.
Oh gosh, okay.
But yeah, no, I got it. For me going from the movie to this and the books and everything like that. Books, I was definitely enthralled, but like it did, and it just might have been getting to know the new Percy and the mom and everything like that, who I'm actually absolutely in love with. I love her acting in this and what she's bringing. But it did take a little bit too long to get to that action for me. But Alejandro, what were your thoughts on this first episode?
I thought they're great. Now there are some things that are here and there. So initially from the 2010 film, realistically speaking, they did, for doing a film and trying to crunch like a novel into a film. And we can tell, for example, I'm going to bring this out here, the Lord of the Rings series. We see what it actually takes, a 3-hour film or 3 hours just to get the first book out and they even missed stuff in that film in general. So that being said, there's going to be some things that we're going to disagree with, and I fully agree with. It's just there's just not enough time in the film itself.
Not to mention the extended versions of Lord of the Rings, right?
Which are
exactly. 4 hours.
No,
don't fit
100%.
fucking everything in it.
And then on that same note, though, if you think about it, it literally could be if they did these episodes and they're like, yo, hey, they could have pulled a Game of Thrones thing, an initial like hour 20-minute special at least. But I think that eventually people, hopefully entertainment industry, will learn and read the room of what may need to be extended, what may not be be extended. So I know it's neither here nor there, but that is actually one of my complaints a little bit. Thank you, Jordyn. That was it just was not long enough. Two, I think the major disconnect is from the previous movie, which should have been extended as well. They aged him up to teenage years. They immediately, started things super fast. So I will say it put the series at a slight disadvantage because it might have seemed slow, quote unquote. And I'm trying to figure out, for those that are not very familiar with it, if Percy Jackson is just freaking out and having trippy moments, or he's actually seeing things. So for those that haven't seen the film, they're not, not too sure about that, or you've seen the film and read the books. But other than that, I think the biggest disconnect is the fact that we I'm going to speak for me as an American viewer of television, of life, I think we're Disney-fied so much to like understand that this is what things are clean, this is what this is rated R, this is PG-13 and so forth as well, that we are not used to what I consider like the grim fairy tales or the true lores of a lot of places, not only in the United States, but beyond different countries. Greek mythology, it is mean. They're assholes. The way Medusa exists, everything, and I won't spoil, but that they're assholes. I mean, it's horrible. You know what I mean? So the fact that I think is another thing we're not used to is, and I think they should have did this to the actors. Maybe the kids are not too young per se, right? Maybe they went on with the classic, hey, let's make them super young. I mean, let's go ahead and give them the clothing, make them look adorable, to realize the fact that they go through some gritty shit. I mean, reality, if to see that the fact they're already stabbing harpies and stuff like that in the first place, I do think that not only did they introduce the monsters pretty quickly, which is great, but at the same time, they should have, I would say, make the grittiness of what a child goes through a little bit more natural in a sense. And I get it. It's Disney. I get it. We're going from different takes, and I think that's what kind of watered it down for me in a sense, just for the childlike actors. But I'm glad that they did stick with age, therefore, because if we're talking about progression like Harry Potter or anything like that, they should age up pretty nicely in a sense if they're consistently going through this as well. But the very beginning of the film, like I said, I was really impressed how they since they had a series to work with, and that there was a 45-minute episode, how they initially introduced the monster and creature, immediately introduced how Percy was seeing things in general. So I think that helped a lot, kind of get it through there. I will say for the first episode, as much as I like the action coming out, I do think my complaint with it not being long enough was also kind of going slow initially at the beginning for me. I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I won't skip on to the next thing very quick here. But yeah, initially my ultimate reaction to everything was great. I do think that it was nice to actually get an idea for who he was, the school settings, coming in and it's seeing where he comes from. Even the introduction of the stepfather, that is actually really freaking important. I've never, from somebody that's never read the book and watched the show, and then after just like, oh wow, looking up, I'm like, holy crap, how they leave him out of the film. I mean, it's like, I thought that was pretty crazy. So sorry, I skipped ahead, but yeah.
Oh no, you're fine. But I did forget to mention Gabe Agliano, Tim Sharp, who actually I like way more in the series than I did in the book and or the movie. Very charismatic guy, and so I'm just like, I enjoy this character that nobody's supposed to like. But no, I'm right there with you. They did. I feel like they did make them younger, the appropriate ages, because from what I've heard, they already are slated to do all 5 books of the series. With these kids, so I think that's why they cast
that's
them
exciting.
So
you get them young and you keep them young. That's what we do here.
Oh my god!
Yet again, every day, all the time. Every time I talk to you now, that's all I want. Be it Disney or not, that's all I want.
Mickey the Pit Boss.
Before we do jump into episode 2 and summarize that and our feelings and everything like that, I do want to jump in the chat a little bit, because Tim's Spiration says, Jordyn's background is kind of unnerving. it looks like they're standing behind him looking at him at a glance. So they're looking right at you and us. So there are other guests tonight. But Tinspiration also says certainly they were accurate to a greater extent than the movies, being the characters and how they're taking the series step by step, which I totally agree. But jumping into episode 2, the title of episode 2 is I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. In this episode, Percy wakes up in the medical tent at Camp Half-Blood, which he was just told about. He kind of wakes up groggy, walks outside, and he meets Dionysus, played by Jason McIntyre. I can't say his last name, but Jason. He walks out there and meets him, and he's just like, hey, what's going on? I'm here to apparently find my father, and Dionysus plays a trick on him, and he's like, well, I'm your dad. Go down here and get me this bottle of wine and come back. And but then Chiron comes up and tells him, no, he's not your dad, but this is who you are. You are a half-blood, or a demigod. A demigod is a human parent and a godparent, and they meet and have a baby, and they're out in the world. They get attacked by monsters as they grow up, and some of them don't even live to be the age Percy is, because monsters start going after him more and more and more and more. But this place, Camp Half-Blood, is a safe haven for all demigods. He starts getting walked around, and he meets Luke Castellan, played by Charlie Bushnell, and he gets placed in the Hermes cabin, because Hermes cabin takes everybody who haven't been claimed by their parents yet, because each child has to get claimed. Meets him. He also meets Annabeth Chase, played by Leah Jeffries. And they start walking him around, showing him the archery and the horses and the Pegasuses and everything like that, and saying, we train for battle, we learn how to fight these monsters for our own safety, and you're welcome to stay here all the time. And then they find out that there's going to be this big camp capture the flag war training games, and Annabeth, which I completely forgot, puts Percy on her team, and they go into this battle. And he gets attacked before the battle by the girl who, wow, why am I messing up? Clarice, another girl. She's the daughter of Ares. He gets attacked by her in the bathroom, and Percy's water god powers, because his father is, kind of destroy her and make fun of her. So during the battle, she goes to attack him specifically and kind of messes him up, kind of cuts him and everything like that. Annabeth kicks him into the water at the end of the series, and his wounds heal, and he stands up, and he has a trident over his head, meaning that he is the son of Poseidon. And that's where this episode ends. Kyle, what were your thoughts going into this, being this is your first time seeing all of this? What were your thoughts on this episode?
Okay, so first off, when you said claimed by their parents, I had this vision of those after school pick up your kids things, but it's a bunch of Greek gods, and they're just in their little chariots, and they're just Timmy, I'm coming, Dad, please, I'm coming. So just walking him over, because and that's where I think that's what was fascinating to me, is because I know that in Greek mythology, I mean, let's be honest, we all know why all these gods and goddesses have so many kids, and I was like, we're making a book about this for young kids. Okay, all right, you guys have 50 million brothers and sisters because your mom and dad, played fishbowl car key games. I mean, what it works. I couldn't disconnect my head from that briefly, but I liked this episode. I liked the world building. I liked that they have reasonable ways to address all that stuff. And I liked that. I went in knowing that he was the son of Poseidon, so I was not entirely surprised. But it was like, oh, hey, I was surprised by how powerful he is, because I know that that the characters have varying degrees of powers and stuff, but I was genuinely surprised that this dude has the water being ready, to come up and give somebody the worst visit to the bathroom that they've ever had, and I'm just like, okay. okay, and it's like, is it your dad? Like, what is this? Where did that come from? But I like that they're playing games and that, you know, so they don't really cut it down violent wise, which I liked. And then but they also so they don't tone it down, but they also keep it toned enough so you don't have to answer like, well, gosh, why are there enough children of Hermes that they have their own cabin? How many people? That's I think where also the disconnect with the series got me. I was like, I know how all this happens. How is it? What's going on here? So I loved it. I loved it.
Good. Alejandro, what are your thoughts on the second episode?
Second episode. It honestly, it was. What's the best way to say this? Better than the first one in sense. I believe the pacing was a little bit better. I was happy with the storytelling a little bit more. I think it's a prime example as well of how I think they're slowly but surely moving their way into filming this, because our first complaint initially in the beginning was they're you know, hey, they're actually young looking. You know, why aren't they, you know, what's going on? This is, maybe they felt like they should be a little more confident. Then you see this battle scene. Now, I remember the second film, and that second film, you know, I thought it was pretty badass. I was like, all right, cool. They're fighting each other. Cool. I didn't understand. I was like, all right. I mean, how can they like top this? But I felt more fear for like Percy Jackson in that scene in which what you call it? Oh man, I'm about to find her name right now. Just looking at her. Clarice that was playing, you know, Clarice coming at her. The fact that she was just swinging those freaking sharp ass, you know, weapons in this direction. You see him getting hit. I found that actually the fighting scene was pretty believable. I was one of those things where it's like, all right, cool. This is a scrawny kid, but he's actually taking the hit, going back and swinging back as well. So just seeing that, I felt the desperation in the fighting scene. So that was very believable for me. So that was cool. I do feel as if, you know, for who he was, there was that, you know, mixture of uncertainty of not knowing how to use his powers, but naturally they appeared in the first episode, and now this one here. But at the same time, wanting to actually have that confidence to be claimed by his father initially. So I felt that was great. Believe it or not, when it comes to his introduction to, let's see here, Luke. I believe that Luke now, in my opinion, is a little bit more likable than Luke that I saw in the initial film. And maybe they're doing this, of course, on purpose, or maybe it's just the excellent acting skills of you know, Charlie Bushnell, I believe his name is. But I mean, realistically speaking, I just felt like a little bit more connection with Luke. So the gift that he tends to give, you know, Percy, with the actual shoes, you know, and just the, you know, the additional there, I believed it a little bit more. I just didn't feel coached, which once again, for those that seen you film and you're watching this now, you'll be like, wait a minute. So, you know, we're at a point where nothing is going to be necessarily revealed like it is in the movie quite yet. But like I said, it was just that really, I don't know. I liked him more. In regards to the casting, like, because when it came to Annabeth, I believe that I was a little skeptical at first, because I was like, why is she so quiet? What's going on? And then it hit me. I was like, she's cold, calculated, and she's just battle planning. And all doubts went like out my freaking head after about, I think, like 6 minutes into filming. I wasn't too sure how they were trying to pursue it. So it was one of those things I was a little unsure of. So I was happy with. But ultimately, I just really, I feel as if we're definitely getting more of an explanation of, you know, of the camp itself, you know. So, you know, being at Camp Half-Blood, I feel as if you have it feels like a camp. In the film, it didn't. It felt like it was some kind of glam away that we're doing false combat training in the film. As badass as it seemed, it still felt it non-campish, really. I felt like, ooh, the hell, what's going on? You know what I mean? So I felt as if we were really feeling like, oh, this actually feels like a camp I stayed at before, you know, minus people trying to slit my throat with multiple weapons. But yeah, I ultimately I felt really good about it.
It depends on how much money your parents had to send you to camp, because that was still a lot.
Very valid.
But I do want to bring up the fight scene that you were talking about with Clarice, how it felt like so real in comparison and everything like that. One, I appreciate that they actually put the fight with Clarice again in the TV show, because it is with her in the book. Mm-hmm. But the reason it does feel real as well, especially the part where he breaks her staff, that scream scared them all in real life. Actually, the actor who plays Percy and the background actors, she let out this feral scream and scared everybody on set. So those actual reactions to her doing that howl. So that I think
That's
as
badass.
well. She's such a good actress to do that. But Jordyn, what were your thoughts on the second episode? Any complaints?
Yeah, well, per the usual, it was too short. I feel like, sorry, River the Nom Talk cat is going insane. I feel like it was too short. I feel like it was a good encapsulate of what needed to happen in that scene, but I feel like it was too much of, oh, hey, you're at a camp. Oh, hey, this is what we do. Oh, hey, you can't shoot arrows. Oh, hey, by the way, we're gonna put you in a like warlike scenario that's like really quick. Oh, hey, you're getting beat by like Ares' daughter. Oh, hey, you're Poseidon. So it was like I feel like it was too. I was like, I know that this was played out longer in the books, right? Like I know that this was like a longer transition from like shit, like I'm a demigod to like now I need to realize that like I don't know who's my dad to I need to realize that like because he meets uh who's the head of the camp, what's his name, the satyr.
Charon? Chiron?
Chiron?
No, the Mr. what's his name?
Dionysus?
Mr. D?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Mr.
Mr.
D, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
like he's like he meets Mr. D and it's like a longer played out thing and then you have, so I feel like it was condensed so much where I was like, "Huh, I wanted to see more of that." But I do appreciate the fact that like that war scene where like they like get split up and Annabeth's like, "Yeah, you're on my team." And it like but even like Annabeth's like her explanation of why she can do what she can do, right, with the cap, with everything, is just kind of watered down and is more focused on Percy. And then you get exposed to the fact that like he's Poseidon's son, and you're like, well, wait, why? Like there is no longer context behind that. So I think for like fans that have like read the books, you're like, oh, like okay, cool, you're following suit, but like I still don't get it. But at the same time, I was like, the actual scenes that were playing out were awesome. I feel like the battle scenes and like him sort of like and I don't know if this is just like a personal irk, but like he sounds like he's a smoker. I know he's like a minor, but like he's like, hey, like I don't know what I'm doing, bro. Like I should be in like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, like type of like voice. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I get it. Like you're probably going through puberty, but at the same time, like pick one, right? And so I don't know. It was just like this episode. I was like, okay, cool. Like you're this, but I also feel that all the other episodes sort of end like that, right? Like, and we'll talk about episode 3 and 4, but like, where it's like he discovers a certain power or he discovers a certain aspect of himself and then it just like suddenly ends and I'm like I would like to know more, like I just want to know a little bit more before the episode ends. And so I feel like this is where it sort of began, where it was like, okay, you're beside the sun, but like why,
You're his son,
Yes.
but why? Why does your dad do that? Why would your dad
yeah,
shoot you?
like where is he, or like why now, right? And I know like us that have read the books, we're like we know why, but in like a cinematic universe and in like a TV universe, I'm like there needs to be some type of explanation because somebody who's never seen this, and I can't speak because I'm like I'm biased to like that information, somebody that sees this, I'd be like, what's going on, right?
Correct. No, and I'm right there with you. Like, at this point, like I became Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. We're already on like chapter like 7 of the book. So there's a lot that's happened in the book up to these 2 points. And they're like me and Jordyn said, they've done a good job of incorporating. It's just they're barely touching on them. And these endings, starting with this one, like Jordyn says, are kind of starting to irk me a little bit because where they're ending them off, they're not giving full explanation. I get it. It's a TV show. You want people to come back, but it's still, there's other points that I felt they could have done it that you're like, okay, well, now I have the explanation. Now I want to go into that next episode. But going into the next episode, the third episode we have, it's called We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Now, this one, Percy has just discovered that he is Poseidon's son, and they take him up to the big house where he's talking to Chiron and Dionysus, and they tell him that they've been waiting for a demigod to come to go on to this quest, because the Zeus's lightning bolt has been stolen, and they have until the summer solstice, winter solstice, summer solstice, to get it back to him, or there's going to be this big war between the gods, mainly with Percy Jackson's father, Poseidon, and Zeus, because he thinks that Percy has taken his thunderbolt. So they tell him that he has to go on this quest, but first, and thank God, they have him go up to the Oracle, who is this crepit old dead rotten body upstairs, and she tells him that he's going on this quest, that he has to pick members of the camp to go with him, at least 2, because the quests are always with 3. And so he picks Grover, who is his best friend, and he picks Annabeth Chase to go with him to find this lightning bolt and to also potentially get his mother back. So they start their journey, and they get on a bus and end up in New Jersey. Bus kind of dies out, and lo and behold, the Furies are there. Megaminolo's back and attacks them again, and they run through the forest, and they end up at this place called the Garden, Madame M's Garden Emporium. Now, in the book, it's different, and so in the first movie, it's different as well. But in this one, they get there and they see statues, and they realize that this is Medusa's place. And Alecto walks up. Medusa walks out and kind of like intimidates her to like not hurt them, invites them in. And she gives a story about how she was turned into Medusa, that she loved Athena and everything like that, fell in love with Poseidon and got punished. Then pretty much tells Percy that she can get rid of Annabeth and Grover, and he can go on the journey alone. He runs away. They go down into her big like statue cavern thing and cut off her head, take her head outside, turn Alecto into a statue, and then they go on their merry way. And that's the end of episode 3, which was not very captivating for me. But what were your thoughts about episode? I had my issues with the Medusa fight scene because it just was very boring to me. But what were your thoughts about this episode?
Who? Me?
Alejandro, sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, I was like, no. So who? No. Honestly, the worst episode of my least favorite. Main reason is, I guess, one, I already know the history of Medusa, so I hear the story, I see different takes on it, pretty much the same, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. What I would say I enjoy the most about this is, once again, they introduced a little bit more information than I was privy to from the actual movie itself. There was no inviting people in dinner. It was immediately coming into, there's really no nice part about it. In the film, they went right to it. It was like, boom, here you are. Oh my God, we are in this unknown place that happens to be Medusa's lair. We fucked up. So when it came to that concept, I did enjoy the series more of them actually introducing or bringing the concept of kind of full-fledged, bring in the mother's comment of understanding of, telling her, are you looking at Medusa an actual monster compared to others, from the previous conversation they had. Don't get me wrong, I don't know if that's actually in the book, please correct me or not, but the fact that it seemed it wasn't in the book at all.
It kind of, they do talk to her, but they don't know she's Medusa. She has a different personality and everything like that. And it's this weird like hamburger stand type theme.
Interesting. Okay, to me, the book obviously shows trials and tribulations, which is fascinating because I heard about the book and being the introduction to how the book plays out. In reality, I've heard the book's very much like traditional, what we call Greek mythology tales. Putting in somebody, obvious youth in a very tragic situation, and it's up to them to actually come in. So that's fascinating hearing that, because now seeing the film or seeing the show and how it plays out, it does seem to like they try to sympathize towards Medusa once again. And here's the deal. Medusa's story is tragic. There's no doubt about it. She got the shitty end of the stick. Now, on the unfortunate part about it is she's engulfed with hate. And you can tell from this part of the film that she has an idea of what's going on. To me, it felt like it was a filler episode. To me, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, holy that's a lot of statues, and I that was fascinating to me. Understanding, Seder figuring out that he lost a previous, relative that was there, and that's the trails there. That was interesting. I found those parts interesting, and I don't blame necessarily what we're seeing. I blame how it's cut and edited and how they played it out. I wish that it seemed like half of that could have been in, or you could have put that in the film, in the first one. Like if they did like a whole hour of that and left that at the end, I might have been like, okay, that was a badass first episode. But it seems like however they continued to film the rest of it, which we find out later, that I can see why. Other than that, I really, like I said, I wasn't really disappointed by it. Like I said, I will agree with you guys in regards to the scene in general. It felt like they just decided to kill Medusa off because it was an easy thing to do coming into it. I felt that was interesting. I wished it was a little bit more in depth with that, but once again, neither here or there. But ultimately, I was, like I said, I was happy to have more information, or more of it seemed to be a longer understanding of the introduction of Medusa. That was nicer, but I felt like the episode was a filler in general.
Oh no, did we lose Erric?
Oh,
I think we lost Erric.
Sorry,
Erric got Medusa.
no, he looked at the statue. No.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
So I guess he'll be back soon. So I guess coming into it, Kyle, let's go ahead and go onto you, my friend. What did you think about the episode, and how did you enjoy it?
So once again, this is one of those stories where I really struggled to separate the Greek myth from the actual character, because because I know the specifics, and we know in the myth of Medusa, Poseidon is not the nice, tortured dad figure here, and we know that, and it was really hard for me for the first time. Like, I have no problem. I'll read anything. I'll read the back of read the back of the soap bottle. But for the first time watching this as a young adult thing, I was just like, this is a little hard for me to separate what's going on with the actual story versus what's going on with this.
Hi.
You're orange.
My internet decided to run away on me, so I don't know what happened there. But I'm glad you guys continued. Go ahead and continue, Kyle.
We were joking and said you got Medusa. You looked at that.
It might have been. I don't know.
No, but it was a little hard for me to connect to it, because I was just like, there's a lot going on here. I know that it's important to the legend of Perseus, because obviously this is a modern retelling of the legend of Perseus. And I know it's important for him to have faced Medusa. So I'm like, okay, I'm going with this. But it really was interesting. For me, the best part at the end was the cameo. The cameo at the very end of the episode, which I'm not going to say who, but that cameo at the very end of the episode made me so happy. I was like, yeah. And that was, yeah. So this was definitely filler. It was a little weird for me to watch, but that cameo very nearly made up for it.
Yes, no, I agree. It was a tougher episode. I feel like they could have combined this third episode with the fourth episode, and that would have been good. And then they could have had more time for episodes 1 and 2, maybe. But Jordyn, what were your thoughts on this episode? I don't know if we actually touched on something yet.
No, we haven't. It was this was a little like, again, this is probably going to be the theme of my fucking like reviews, right? Like, this episode was rushed 100%, right? They end up, escaping the train. They go to Madame M's Emporium, and I do feel like the films did this better than this sort of whole thing, right? Where they realize, like, it's like automatically they know it's Medusa, right? Like, it's like, and then it was like, oh, welcome, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And I do feel like we need to address the elephant in the room, where it was like, at the very end, when they cut Medusa's head off, Percy Jackson rebels and says, we need to send this head to the gods in order for them to get a message sent. I did appreciate that, because Percy Jackson represents sort of like this rebellion against the norm, right? Like, and we see this theme play out in this episode and in continuing episodes since, right? and I did appreciate that. And yeah, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, like as much as he
Oh.
pisses me off because he's in like every fucking thing on the planet, I'm like, okay, fine, like cool, do your thing, like be the delivery guy for the gods, right? Like you're like he's Hermes, right? Like
Hermes,
that's
yes.
who he is, yeah. And uh, like I was like, okay, cool, right? And like we see the consequences after, but I kind of appreciate the fact that they address sort of like the rebellious nature of Percy because he's like, no, I'm not going to be a traditional fucking demigod. I want to like, and the fact that this character and this actor is questioning every aspect of what it is to be a demigod and what it is to be a god and subservient to them is amazing. And I feel like we get our first taste of this in this episode, which I definitely appreciated because we see that throughout the books of Percy Jackson, where he's like, why is it this way? Why can't it be different? Like, why do we have to constantly follow this like, oh, we need to give homage to the gods, right? And I think that like goes I think it differentiates from the traditional like Greek mythology version of it versus like the retelling of it, where it's like we have people now that are like, okay, but like, why do I respect you even though you disrespect me my entire life, right? Like, and so I did appreciate that of this episode, but yeah, I feel like it was a little rushed, and I feel like it was not as well executed as it was in the movie with like Uma Thurman, right? Like with her playing Medusa. I kind of liked that aspect. It was more, the movie was more Clash of the Titans Medusa esque than it was with Percy Jackson Medusa esque. I feel like it was a little, I feel like it was a little like kiddie in this one. And I was like, okay, like I get it. And then we learn about like the after effects of like when Grover saw his like uncle who, all that stuff. And like, I don't know. It was just, yeah, it was quick. It was too quick for me, and it was too, like, I don't know. But overall, I feel like it did a really good job at explaining why Percy is rebellious in nature.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that one. Percy's rebelliousness of the demigods that you meet, especially with Percy being there and Annabeth being right alongside of him. She is very by the book. This is the knowledge I have. I've been training for this. And Percy's like, well, I have a pen sword. Let's kind of go.
Let's go.
And that's always who he is throughout the entire series. And he actually, like Jordyn was saying, kind of breaks down stuff, especially with Annabeth. And we'll see that in a couple of episodes. But like I was saying, Lin-Manuel Miranda playing Hermes at the end of this episode, walking with Medusa's head in the box to take it up to the gods as a gift, was the first little slap in the face that Percy does give to them. And I really hope that Lin-Manuel does not sing at all during the series, because then I will kill somebody.
But how
I
do
will
you really feel? Like, just let it all out.
I like
will
him, but he's in
throw
everything, and I
I
will.
will
That's
throw
right.
dynamite at Disney.
He is in everything. I took him. I made sure he was on my payroll.
Oh, he definitely is. But let's jump into episode 4, which is the last episode that we're going to be talking about today, called
That's
"I
hilarious.
Plunged to My Death." In this episode, they get away from Madame M's, and they manage to get on a train heading for heading for the west, because that's where they think they have to go now.
They're going to LA.
Yeah, they're going to LA. And so the train, unfortunately, they meet this woman. Her name is Echidna. You don't actually know her name, but she's played by Susan Cryer. And her little dog in a little carrier bag, at least you think it's a dog. As she says that the kids destroyed their cabin and their train, everything like that. And come to find out, she is the mother of all monsters. So all the monsters that you've kind of seen so far, this is their mom. She attacks the kids. They end up getting off the train somehow and running to the St. Louis Arch, because that is Annabeth's mom's, one of her temples, the modern day temple. So she believes that they should be protected there. They get there, and unfortunately, Annabeth has not been under her mother's good graces because of this whole situation thus far. So pretty much Athena lets Echidna go into the arch and attack these kids. Percy ends up getting poisoned, and they're at the top of the arch. Ends up getting poisoned, pushing Grover and Annabeth into a stairwell and finding them on their own. A big hole opens up at the bottom of the arch during this battle, and in order to save himself, Percy pretty much jumps out the hole, or what kind of falls out the hole. And then St. Louis River kind of comes across and picks him up, which Rick Riordan definitely didn't do his due diligence on how close the arch was to the river, because it kind of had to arc and then arc and then arc to pull him into the actual river. But he gets there and he meets a dryad in the water. And she says that just breathe and believe in yourself. And like, these are your powers. Your dad will be there for you. And so he heals himself and is saved pretty much. At the end of the episode, cops are there because of a terrorist attack on a train, terrorist attack on the arch, and these 3 kids are now enemy number 1 because Echidna said who they are, everything like that. And so they're kind of screwed at this point at the end of this episode. Alejandro, what were your feelings? Was this rushed? Do you feel like it could have been combined with episode 3 like I do? What were your thoughts?
My issue, once again, it seems to be a running issue, like Jordyn mentioned before. So there is a speed issue. I will say that I have to say this. This is slightly related, slightly not. It just dawned on me why I think this actor is going to be excellent for Percy Jackson. I don't know if you guys seen the Adam Project for Netflix anywhere, but he plays like the young. Yeah, I was gonna say he's like the young Ryan Reynolds. And for those who don't do it, he is very snarky. He has a mouth on him. He's pretty funny. And now I'm thinking about this. If he develops the way he is, maybe, and this is to maybe answer Jordan's previous question, because he has this unknowing, not very sure where the voice is kind of going, kind of deal, kind of like mystically. He's Keanu Reeving the whole thing right now. So he's like, what's going on? Not too sure. But that being said, at this point where we're at, I'm gonna be real with you. I was a little terrified of the kidnap. I was that little creature in the box there. That initially little creature, So the initial interaction, him being stabbed, I'm a sucker. I believe that got to me. The one thing, again, is it just feels as if they were trying to push this information to you really quickly. And I feel as if they're kind of rushing these episodes to meet an expectation of what a lot of viewers do. They don't like waiting, and we don't like waiting for the next episode. And I'm thinking right now, to me, it feels like we're being suckered into it in a sense. So it's not a negative. I just want them to hopefully, all right, learn from this. Let's, hold more information. So I do fully agree with you. If it was combined episode 3 and 4, I thought that would have been great. If they just gave us 2 long ass episodes, I would have been happy. To me, that would have been a more preference. I will say this: for the amount of CGI and stuff that we have to deal with, I was actually impressed with some of the creatures. I do believe the harpies and so forth as well. Still, like I wish there's practical effects still here there, but I'm a little happy they went in that direction, because we get stuck into points where either the acting's not believable, or the temporary special effects, or what they use just to get the audience on through a pilot sucks. So I was happy that it wasn't victim of that per se. I will say, actually, just gonna thank you. That Chimera freaking scary as shit. Chimera, it's just not a man. I, as a kid, always heard of it, so seeing something to my eyes that wasn't on paper, that was nuts. But once again, I guess my biggest complaint was just the pacing of it all. I do finally enjoy that we do see a portion where he shows his true powers. He heals himself. Holy crap! I mean, who freaking does that? We do see there's a cut, but the fact that he had poison through him, he pretty much got his ass handed to him. When it comes to this thing, in my case, he is a classic case of like victim but hero at the same time, of just trying to like slowly but surely get his ass kicked, but somehow maneuver his way out of it. So seeing him having a point, going, oh great, you actually not only have a true connection to your father, this mer creature, I'm going to call it right here at the time being, but the fact that you're acknowledging it, and then not only that, but taking and healing yourself, I thought that was cool. I will say this: that brief interaction with it, when they're like, oh, your father does know you, and then boom, gone, I was a little pissed with, because to me, I was like, yo, okay. like is this like your wizard Harry moment? What the fuck is this? And I was like, all right, whatever, but I do understand on a pacing level, and at the pacing that Jordyn pointed out at the very beginning, it was very fast paced. And I get if we're continuing on the fast pace, the fast pace they were doing, I guess that makes sense on that aspect of it. I will say, and this is all ended on this note right from myself, that I truly enjoy episode 1 and 2 more than I do 3 and 4. I think 3 and 4 had plenty of chances and they did have lots of action, but I felt like it was played out differently. And I felt if they just blended the actions from 3 and 4 in with the episodes of 1 and 2, we might have got a little bit more wholesome. And Jordyn mentioned it, Kyle even mentioned before, okay, I understand this tale, even though I have histories of Greek mythology with the new age introduction of this, but something's missing. What's that connection there? But once again, I would give this a thumbs up, but it's like I said, 3 and 4 to me are a little less likable than 1 and 2.
Yeah, no, and I'm agreeing with you. I enjoyed getting to know Echidna, the mother monsters, a lot more, and seeing the chimera and everything like that. They're doing something weird in these last 2 episodes. They did it with Medusa and they did it with Echidna, to where they're giving us more explanation and getting to know them a little bit more. But then the actual action scenes that they do have these battles, like with Medusa, her battle was way more epic in the movie and in the books.
Yeah.
Echidna wasn't, unfortunately, not in the movie, but in the books, there's this huge, and it's this, people are running and fearing for their lives, and they think it's an actual attack, and it's way bigger. They're just not giving it they're putting the wrong emphasis on kind of the wrong things for me. What are your thoughts on this, Jordyn, on episode 4?
Yeah, so I kind of like this episode better in the series, but I think I agree with Alejandro with certain context, right? I do feel like this episode, again, this is going to be my complaint from here on out, was too short, and they packed too much fucking shit in this one episode, right? Because they get off, they have to escape the train, then they have to escape Echidna, right? They go to the museum that's below the St. Louis Arch. By the way, I've been to the St. Louis Arch in a blimp, right? I haven't been in it, but I've been above it, and it's huge. It is ginormous, right? But there's a little thing, and they have to do that, and then Percy is I knew from jump when that fucking thing stung him. I was like, oh, he's fucking gone, right? And if you've read the books, right, you're like, oh yeah, he's fucking poisoned. So you're going on this adventure, and then I thought it was so hilarious, the scene where they're splashing water on him right in the fountain, and they're like, oh no, I have to plead to my mom, right? And then they get to the top, and then Echidna basically tells Annabeth that her mom basically is pissed off at her because of the whole Medusa head and all that stuff. And that I appreciated, and the fact that Percy is now coming into his personhood, and he's like, no, I'm gonna save my friends even though I'm fucking poisoned. He does that. He tries to fight the chimera. He falls, and then his dad saves him. We all knew that was coming, but I think the pivotal moment, right, was when he's in the water and he's struggling, and the naiad or dryad?
Naiad.
Oh, is it a naiad? Okay.
Dryads, I believe, are for trees, and naiads are in water.
Thank you. The naiad was like, your father knows you exist, blah, blah, blah. And Percy's like, no, fuck that fool, right? And then finally, the dryad is, or the naiad's just breathe, which is what his mom told him, right? Whenever, or he told his mom, and they would say to each other, and then he can breathe underwater. I think this is also a pivotal thing for this series, where it's they're trying to say that Percy has all these powers without explaining them. And I don't think that's pervy to people that haven't seen or haven't read, right, these books, right? Where it's oh, okay, well, now he can breathe underwater. Cool, why? And it's okay, cool. He's yeah, he's Poseidon's son, but can he do that? He doesn't have gills. What's going on, right? And so I feel like that whole episode, I do feel like that whole episode was action packed. It was like constant, right? It was like this was happening and this was happening and this was happening, right? But there wasn't really an explanation, and it was like, oh, it was like Annabeth, oh, my mom's pissed off at me, and I'm like, okay, well, why? Like, I get the Medusa head thing, but like, why did Percy's actions affect why your mom is pissed off at you, right? Like, there wasn't really that sort of like overall explanation. What I do appreciate, and I don't think we addressed this, was how we uh Grover addressed the fact that Pan, the god of like nature, was just missing. And we like that was sort of like glossed over with all of everything that was going on with everything else. And I feel like that's a pivotal like moment, especially for Grover and especially for satyrs in the books, where it was like that was a moment where, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but like it was a moment where it was like that should have been like expanded more for a little bit, and it wasn't. And like we're more focusing on Annabeth and Percy for like a good reason, right? Like because they're like the growth of that. But I do feel like this episode, I feel like it was my favorite because it was just it was I like action, I like what's going on, and I feel like this represented more of like, I don't know, it had a summary of like Greek mythology in like a nutshell than most of the episodes previously did.
Okay.
But but add CGI to it, and it made it sort of more tangible and digestible.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you. They give more of a, like you said, Greek mythology to it. It just there was more that I wanted from it. And like you said, these episodes, and this will be all of our gripes, need to be longer. But I do want to get your guys' final thoughts over this first 4 episodes. Like, have we gotten to know the characters well enough? Do you think you know them? Do you like where the story is going? Do you think you know where the story is going? Like, do you wish there were more gods and monsters and everything like that? We'll start with you on this one, Kyle.
Okay. So I think I wrote a piece a while back that wasn't about Greek mythology, it was about Norse mythology, but it pointed out something that Alejandro made me realize, which is that at the time, the stories of these Greek gods and goddesses were essentially the Grecian equivalent to the MCU. Okay, these were the Grecian equivalent to the MCU, to the Harry Potter movies. These were the things that you'd wake up in your forgive me if there's any Greeks watching this, your temple or your goat hut or whatever, and you'd go and you'd be like, oh my god, did you hear about what happened to the lady and the swan? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So these were the tales, these were the morality tales that were set down. And we talk about the hero's journey. And it's basically that. And then you have trying to adapt that for a younger audience. And I think there really is a disconnect between wanting to see. I really do think, at least for me, speaking for me, it is a disconnect between that crux of knowing that this is adapting it for people who are younger than I am. This is embarrassing for me to admit that there's it's adapting for people who are younger than I am, but also that I'm much more interested in the Sopranos-esque family dinners that the Greek gods must be having up there on Olympus, because you have to, and I would really much rather be watching the parents, because if you consider that Poseidon, I mean, yes, he has his sea palace and whatever. If you consider that Poseidon has to deal with Athena and know that the two of them have beef, and then you start to wonder about the machinations of the parents behind the scenes, which I think is a big portion of why, like, there's a lot of really subtle layers. I'm with Jordyn that I liked this episode better because I think that it really did start to introduce the layers, and going into episode 5, you do see a lot more of the layers with the relationships with the gods and the kids. And you do see that it's a story. It's not just a story about a hero that's a kid. It's a story about a family, and it's a story about a kid dealing with what amounts to a crappy parent, because these characters in the the Greek CU, the Greek Pantheon, the Greek Pantheon universe, the GPU, these characters were like living beside these people, and they weren't just morality tales, but they were tales of like, cautionary tales too. And I don't think there's anything more cautionary than realizing that you have a parent. No parent is perfect, but in this case, your parent is a particularly absentee, crappy one. And I think that Percy's journey of coping with that, and then the nice thing is that they're allowing these huge mythological characters to have pathos and backstory. And I'm thinking about episode 6 in particular, and I'm not going to go into spoilers, where we actually like talk to one of the parents and get to know them. And and same with 5, and you really kind of see like how they react to it. And I think that, you know, my gripes remain the same as everyone else's. It was, the series is too short, the episodes are too short. They're trying to pack a lot in, and this could benefit from a longer runtime where we get to spend time with both sides of the group. But it is Percy Jackson's story, so I have to accept that I connect to this character. I recognize what Rick Riordan is trying to do. I see and understand and respect that. And, you know, I have to kind of suspend my sense of disbelief. And once again, imagine Poseidon and Athena just glaring daggers at each other while, you know, Zeus just sits at the head of the table like Tony Soprano, just pinching the bridge of his nose. Oh my God.
We get to see that with a couple of them, hopefully, if they do it. But Alejandro, what are your final thoughts about these first 4 episodes? You want to see more? What are your thoughts? I can't hear you.
Sorry. One of my cats are freaking out, so I didn't want to hear every 10 seconds. Adorable things there. But I definitely want to see more. I like the direction it's going. I want them to switch it up a little bit. Now, what I mean by this is that, to me, like I said, when I say the least 2 favorite episodes, I don't think they were horrible. I just don't like them compared to the pacing of the first 2. Let's be real. The pacing, all 4 of them were fast in general, but I just feel as if they blended the last 2 with the first 2, then maybe 2 really great episodes would have been better in a sense. Hopefully, at this point, maybe they'll find a happy medium what they're going for. So realistically, I'm not. I'm going to watch the next episodes. It's just what it is. I'm really hyped for it. So that's still there. I do believe the casting ultimately is great. I believe that they are believable children of, you know, demigods. I do believe that you show the struggle. I believe the internal struggle may be showing a little too much sometimes on their faces. I will say that I enjoy so much these characters more than I did in the film. They weren't bad actors in the film. I just think they reflect a true child like nature when it comes to this kind of thing. As well to, like I said, Grover's character, in my opinion, it seems to be now correct. I feel as I see like a more of an internal struggle with Grover now than I did in the first film. For the first film, it just felt like there was an old-timely cockiness there that, don't get me wrong, satyrs, pans, they have this cockiness to it. It's there. So it's interesting because, like, don't get me wrong, correct me if it's different in the book here, but seeing this character here struggle for who he was, it makes sense to me. And but at the same time, I don't know if it is a on purpose thing because of the book itself. So, but ultimately, I did enjoy him, and I'm expecting the next episode.
This Grover in the series is more like the book. The Grover in the film, that like cockiness and arrogance and stuff like that, that really the Grover that was in the books. Really, the Percy, the Annabeth, and everything, there was glimpses of that from the books into the movie, but these are way more accurate to the books. So yeah, Jordyn, what were your thoughts on these 4 episodes?
Yeah, hold on, I'm trying to get River to make an appearance. I got you. Oh, I got you. She's so big now. Hold on.
Oh, it's a cat. Hello.
This is River, the original.
Holy moly.
Say hi, River.
Oh, she waved.
She's so big. Mm-hmm.
Where are the Egyptian deities?
Oh, this is my Egyptian deity right here. No,
see, that's where. Forget the Greek gods. We need the cat god. We need all the cats.
Hello. Anyway, okay, don't crawl on my. Okay, good. Yeah, go out there. So for me, overall thoughts, I'm enjoying it. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's definitely more of an accurate representation of the books than the films were. I will say that. As far as characters go, I did like the film Annabeth better than I did like this Annabeth. I feel like this Annabeth is a little bit more like woe is me type of thing, and not and not so much of like a strong sort of like female Athenian character, right? Like, but I do like the way that it's going for her, and I feel like it's just going to get better and better. Um, I feel like with the mythology aspect, it's this series has done an incredible job at trying to relay all of that like compact information to a crowd that may not have read or known what Percy Jackson is. So I do give applause and credence to that. Um, Again, like my gripe's going to be, I wish all this stuff was longer. I wish that these episodes were like Falcon and Winter Soldier long and not like WandaVision long, right? Like where it was like, oh, like, or no, WandaVision long where it was like an hour versus like Falcon was. So I wish it was longer, right? Like I wish we had more time, and even if it was like 10 minutes to explain just some sort of background, right? Like why people do the things that they do. And I don't feel like this series does that. I feel like it's like a condensed version. It's like a Campbell's condensed soup of like Percy Jackson. So, and while I don't feel like it's not giving credence to that, I feel like it could do a better job. But overall, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. Like I'm watching it, I'm sitting there and I'm like, there isn't a moment or a minute where I'm like, this shit sucks. Right? Like I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, and like my dad's like, what are you watching? And I'm like, oh, it's this like series about blah blah blah. And he goes, okay, I'm gonna sit down for like the 5 minutes. And he's like, that was cool. And I'm like, yeah, it's like it's awesome, it's amazing. And I think the actors and the actresses are doing a really great job of the characters and everything. I would just like to see more, and that's just me as a fan. I would just like to see a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And like we said, these are our gripes. Love to see more. Um, and with the Annabeth character, I do have to agree with you. I do like the movie version. And my partner sent me a text message because he's watching and he's like, what about this? Annabeth seems to have a little bit more of a chip on her shoulder and not as because the movie Annabeth does too, but the movie Annabeth is like a little bit more stronger into her power.
Yeah.
She knows a little bit more who she is and that confidence. To whereas this one, maybe it may be her age that she doesn't really have that yet, but we get to see great things from her.
Yeah.
I'm loving the casting. I'm right there with you. There's not a moment that I'm just like, oh, I hate this and I'm going to shut it off because I'm totally enthralled with it because I do love this series. But we are out of time, guys. We managed to get through four episodes because we keep having to pause this because of other things. But next week we are going to continue with episodes, I believe 5 through 8, might be 5 through 7, 5 through 8. But we're going to do this all again. But thank you guys for being here. Let everybody know out there where they can find you guys. And Alejandro, where can everybody out there find you?
Oh shoot! Real simple. It's gonna be I am Cowie. I am Cowie. That'd be Instagram. I used to do a lot of shenanigans. Get back to that too soon. Or also on TikTok at Alejandro.Cowie. That's where you can find me. And here.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here. Jordyn, where can everybody out there find you?
I am on Instagram. It is City of Stars 13. You can follow me. I post funny stories. I haven't posted a post in a very long time, so you can just like follow my stories. Some of them are of River, the Nom Talk, the original Nom Talk cat, but Apollo and Athena, for our lovely producer, and Alejandro are gonna probably replace River.
No.
Rightfully so. We're gonna just have a horde of like cats.
Nom Talk cat family.
Yeah, right. Like I'm talking about. And then I am on TikTok. I don't know what my like thing is. I rarely post on there, but just follow me on Instagram. You can find fun comedic stories there to make you laugh and have a good time.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here. And then Kyle, where can everybody out there locate you?
So you can find me on Blue Sky at Kyle Poddig. That's KylePoddig. You can find me on Threads at Caroline Arts, CarolingArts. Caroline Arts, that should be my Threads. And And then you can also find me on TikTok, which is where most of my content's consistent. If you like unboxing videos, if you like cosplay content, if you like people rambling about indie mascot horror and indie horror video games, that's usually what ends up on my cosplay. But unboxing videos in particular is something that I've ended up doing a lot more of, just to kind of get more practice with talking to people. So you can find that at Caroline, CAROLING _cosplay. And that's basically it.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here as well. And thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to join our Discord to keep this conversation going, as well as subscribing to all of our other platforms at Nom Talk Network. I'm your host, Erric Ramirez, and you can find me on all socials at Heartless7. That's HARTL, the number 3, SS7. I pretty much have all of them except for X now that it's changed. But please be sure to join us next week when we'll be going through episodes 5 through 8 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. But until then, have a nomorific day.